5 years. 2,000 overtime hours. Hundreds of sacrificed weekends. All for this moment. The champagne was fizzing in the glasses while I looked at the elegant decoration of the company's party hall. Blue and gold banners hung from the ceiling, the corporate colors of Nexus Technologies. The background music created that same controlled celebratory atmosphere, typical of corporate events. I adjusted my little black dress, bought especially for tonight, while greeting some colleagues. "Jessica, you look amazing tonight," said Marcos from the finance department. "Thanks, it is a special night, right?" I replied, unable to hide my smile. I scanned the crowd for Scott. My boss was in the middle of the room, sipping his whiskey, surrounded by executives. Our eyes met and he quietly raised his glass towards me. That gesture meant so much, it was almost a confirmation of what he had been hinting at during our weekly meetings for months. "Your numbers are impressive, Jessica. Keep it up and soon there will be more news," he would say. Or sometimes, "The board has been watching your work. We are thinking about some changes in the management structure. Subscribe to the channel and leave a like to get more stories like this." Amanda, my closest colleague, came up with 2 glasses. "Nervous?" she asked as she handed me a drink. "A little. But I'm confident. There's no one in this company who knows our processes better than me. No doubt about it. Scott would be a complete idiot if he didn't promote you." I looked around and noticed Emily, the new analyst, chatting animatedly with some directors. She had only been here for 3 months, coming from a smaller competitor. Intelligent and charming, but inexperienced in our field. The sound from the microphone interrupted my thoughts. Scott climbed onto the small improvised stage. "It's time," Amanda whispered, giving my arm a gentle squeeze. Underscore 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 underscore. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to our annual celebration," Scott began. "This year has been extraordinary for Nexus. We increased our market share by 17%, launched 3 new products, and expanded to 2 countries. Applause filled the room. Scott raised his hands, asking for silence. Much of this success is thanks to our team's unmatched dedication. And today, I am pleased to announce an important change in our management structure." My heart raced. I felt Amanda squeeze my shoulder. This was the moment. As you all know, we were looking for someone to take on the role of senior manager. We needed someone with an innovative vision, someone who can bring new perspectives. Scott paused dramatically, his eyes scanning the room. "That is why I have the immense pleasure of announcing our new senior manager, Emily Parker." Time froze. People applauded, but the sound felt distant, as if I were underwater. Emily, visibly surprised, made her way to the stage, her face lit up by a radiant smile. "Thank you, Scott. I am absolutely honored," she said into the microphone. I kept a fixed smile on my face, feeling it harden like plaster. Amanda shot me an incredulous look. "Emily brings a fresh perspective that we needed," continued Scott. "In just 3 months, she has demonstrated the kind of disruptive thinking that will take us to the next level." Then he looked directly at me with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Jessica, you, who have been with us for so long, might want to take some notes from Emily. Sometimes, new blood is exactly what we need, right?" Polite laughter echoed around the room. I felt a blush rising on my neck, my cheeks burning. Some people looked away, embarrassed. Others watched me curiously, waiting for my reaction. Emily, noticing the discomfort, tried to ease it. "Jessica has been an amazing mentor to all of us." But the damage was done. 5 years of dedication reduced to a public joke. The rest of the party passed in a blur. I smiled at the congratulatory messages directed at Emily. I drank more champagne than I should have. I received pats on the back and pitying glances. When I finally got home, the quiet apartment welcomed me like a refuge. I took off my heels, left my purse on the sofa, and opened my laptop. The initial humiliation had turned into crystal clear clarity about what I needed to do. I opened my email and started typing my resignation letter. No drama, no accusations, just facts. I thanked them for the opportunity, mentioned my contributions, and informed them that I was leaving the company immediately, using my accumulated vacation days as notice. While drafting the email, another thought came to mind. I opened my drawer and took out a business card I had kept for a few weeks. Michael Carter, former CFO of Nexus, fired by Scott the previous year after a disagreement over the company's strategic direction. Michael had started his own consulting firm and, at a recent event, mentioned that he was looking for someone with my profile. "When you realize that Scott does not value real talent, call me," he had said. It was 2 a.m. when I dialed his number, with no expectation that he would answer. "Michael Carter," came a surprisingly alert voice. "Michael, this is Jessica Martins from Nexus. Are you still looking for someone for your team?" On Monday, I arrived at Nexus earlier than usual. I needed to clear my desk before the office filled up. Amanda appeared while I was packing my things. "You're really doing this, huh?" she asked, incredulously. "The decision has been made. I already sent the email to HR last night. But Jessica, you built your career here. You're going to throw it all away because of what? A public insult. 5 years ignored. I'm not throwing anything away, Amanda. I'm moving on." The office door opened abruptly. Scott entered, holding a printed copy of my resignation email, his face torn between anger and panic. "Can we talk in my office?" he asked, his tone controlled despite his fidgeting hands. His office was like a showcase of his ego, trophies, certificates, photos with important executives. I sat across from him, strangely calm. "Is this about Friday? Look, if you're upset." "I'm not upset, Scott. I'm making a professional decision. Jessica, you have been an incredibly valuable employee. Maybe I didn't make that clear enough." "It was perfectly clear on Friday." Scott sighed, running his hand through his perfectly styled hair. "That was unfortunate. I was just trying to lighten the mood. Emily is good, but she doesn't have your experience. We need you. You need my work, not me. There is a difference. What can I do to make you reconsider? A raise? More benefits? Nothing. I have already accepted another offer." His face paled. "Where? Does that really matter? It is with Michael, isn't it? He's trying to steal you away." I stood up, oddly satisfied that he had correctly perceived the situation. "Maybe you should be taking some notes, Scott. Sometimes we need to lose something to understand its true value." I finished clearing my desk as the office filled up. The rumors spread quickly. I could feel the stares and hear the whispers. Most people were surprised, some clearly worried about what my departure would mean for their own workload. Emily appeared as I closed the last box. She looked genuinely embarrassed. "Jessica, I had no idea Scott had promised you the position. If I had known." "Don't worry about it. It wasn't your fault." I extended my hand. "Good luck with the role. You'll need it." I grabbed my things and walked down the central corridor. Some colleagues came up for discreet goodbyes. Marcos from finance briefly hugged me, whispering, they will realize the mistake they made. When I got to the elevator, I noticed something unusual. Amanda had stood up and started clapping slowly and deliberately. Paolo from accounting joined her. Then Saar from marketing. One by one, several colleagues clapped discreetly, while others watched confusedly or pretended not to notice. Scott watched from his office door, his face getting redder by the second. The elevator arrived, the doors opened. I stepped in and turned for one last look at the office that had been my second home for 5 years. The doors closed, and with them, a chapter of my life ended. As I left the building, I felt the October sun warm my face. My phone buzzed, a message from Michael. "We can't wait to have you tomorrow. Your office is all set." For the first time in a long while, I smiled effortlessly. It wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The Carter Consulting office was on the 10th floor of a modern building downtown. Right at the reception, I noticed the difference in atmosphere. There was none of that underlying tension of Nexus, that constant feeling of being judged. The employees chatted casually but with purpose. "Jessica, welcome." Michael appeared in the lobby, smiling genuinely. He wore a navy blazer without a tie, an informality that Scott would never allow. "Come on, I want to introduce you to the team." As we walked through the corridors, Michael talked about the firm, founded only 8 months earlier, but already with an impressive client roster. After Scott fired me for disagreeing with his narrow vision, I realized it was the perfect opportunity to create something different. A consultancy that truly values innovation, not just talking about it at corporate parties. The meeting room was full, about 15 people who paused their conversation when we entered. "Everyone, this is Jessica Martins, our new Chief Operating Officer." Chief Operating Officer? My shock must have been obvious, because Michael smiled discreetly before continuing. "Jessica brings 5 years of experience from Nexus, where she practically rebuilt all of their operational processes. I'm sure many of you have heard about her work or seen her presentations at industry conferences." To my surprise, several people nodded. A man at the far end of the table commented, "Your supply chain optimization model is brilliant. I tried to implement something similar at my old company." Michael continued with the introductions, and each person mentioned a specific aspect of my work they knew or admired. Work that at Nexus was often attributed to Scott's team or presented by him at conferences. After the meeting, Michael led me to a large office with a view of the city park. A nameplate on the door read Jessica Martins, Chief Operating Officer. "This is your space," he said, opening the door. "I know it might seem sudden to offer a C-level role right off the bat, but I have been following your work for years. You deserved this a long time ago." I put my box of belongings on the oak desk and looked out at the panoramic view. For the first time in a long time, I felt a mix of relief and excitement. "Michael, I have to ask, why me?" He leaned against the doorframe. "When I worked at Nexus, you were the only one who truly understood the need for innovation with responsibility. Scott always wanted quick results, no matter the long-term consequences." He paused. "Besides, anyone Scott underestimates normally turns out to be worth their weight in gold." At the end of that first day, sitting in my new office organizing my files, I received a message from Amanda. "The place feels empty without you. Scott is in a terrible mood. Emily seems lost with the projects that were yours. How's it going over there?" I looked around my open office, at the big desk, at the whiteboard where I had already scribbled some ideas during the afternoon. I replied, "Different. Better. I finally feel heard." In the following weeks, I dove into work with renewed energy. Michael had structured the company in a way that was radically different from Nexus. Decisions were made collectively, ideas were truly discussed instead of just being dictated from the top down. My opinion was actively sought during strategic meetings, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to filter my thoughts or adjust them to Scott's expectations. In my second month, I proposed a complete restructuring in how we approached industrial sector clients, our weakest segment. I presented my plan in a directors' meeting. "It's ambitious," commented Raphael, the finance director. "But the numbers make sense." "I agree," said Michael. "Let's implement it. Jessica, lead the project and build your team." Simple as that. No endless revisions, no having to convince fragile egos, no diluting my ideas so others could take credit. Just direct recognition and trust in my abilities. At the end of that month, my team secured 2 important new industrial clients. At a low-key celebration organized by Michael, I raised my glass in a silent toast to my own courage in leaving Nexus. Sometimes, you have to take a step back to move several steps forward. You will not believe it. Amanda's message blinked on my phone on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 months after leaving Nexus. Global Tech just cancelled their contract with us. Global Tech was one of Nexus's biggest clients, accounting for almost 15% of the annual revenue. I had personally structured their logistics system and maintained a close relationship with Thomas, their operations director. Before I could reply, another message arrived. "Scott is going crazy, yelling at everyone. Emily tried handling their complaints last month, but apparently only made things worse." I barely had time to process the news when my assistant knocked on the door. Jessica, Thomas Henderson from Global Tech is online too. A curious coincidence. I answered the call, keeping my tone professional. Thomas, what a surprise. Jessica, I finally got a hold of you. When I heard you left Nexus, I took a while to find out where you were now. What can I do for you? Straight to the point, as always, he laughed. We just terminated our contract with Nexus. Since you left, nothing's been working right. The new manager, Emily, I think. She doesn't understand our needs. She made changes that threw off the whole system that you had set up. I kept my expression neutral, even though I was alone in the office. I'm sorry to hear that. We want to hire Carter Consulting. But there is one condition: you need to lead our project. After hanging up, I was absorbed in thought. I hadn't planned for this. I wasn't actively looking to hurt Nexus. I was just doing my job, now in an environment that appreciated my contributions. That evening, another message from Amanda: news about Global Tech is spreading. Other clients are asking questions. Scott called an emergency board meeting tomorrow. A week later, Amanda sent a discreet photo taken in the Nexus cafeteria. Emily was sitting alone, visibly stressed, surrounded by papers and with deep dark circles under her eyes. She's sinking. After Global Tech, we lost Tech Solutions yesterday. Guess who called asking for you? Tech Solutions was another client I had personally served for years. Their director, James Peterson, was known for his loyalty to people, not companies. The next day, as expected, James appeared at Carter Consulting. Michael called me in for an initial meeting. Jessica, James exclaimed when he saw me. I knew I would find you here. When that new manager started messing up our processes and Scott insisted everything was under control, I knew it was time to look for alternatives. Over the following weeks, a series of ex-Nexus clients started reaching out to us. Not only those I had directly served, but others who had heard about the quality of our work. Carter Consulting was growing rapidly, while rumors about problems at Nexus were spreading in the market. One Friday morning, I received the most surprising message from Amanda. Nexus stocks dropped 22% after the quarterly report. We lost 6 major clients in the last 2 months. Emily resigned yesterday, had a nervous breakdown in front of the whole department. Scott was called by the board for a serious talk today. That same afternoon, Michael walked into my office, holding a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. We just closed our 30th new client this quarter, he announced, placing the glasses on my desk. 15 of them are ex-Nexus clients. While we savored the champagne, Michael casually remarked, "Did you know Nexus stocks have plummeted? The market is speculating about serious structural problems over there." I heard something about it, I replied, choosing discretion. I don't take any satisfaction in it, Michael said, surprising me with his sincerity. I worked there for 12 years before Scott fired me. I built relationships, developed projects. It's sad to see a company with so much potential sink because of poor management. I silently agreed, feeling a complex mix of emotions. I didn't wish for Nexus to fail, I just wanted recognition for my work. And now, ironically, my absence was demonstrating my value far more eloquently than my presence ever did. Winter arrived, bringing snow to the city and unexpected changes in my life. Carter Consulting had expanded to another floor in the building. My team now had 12 people, many of them former Nexus employees who sought opportunities with us when rumors about problems at the company intensified. On a particularly cold December morning, I was focused on reviewing a proposal for a new client when my assistant rang the intercom. "Jessica, there's a Scott Bennett at reception insisting on speaking with you. He doesn't have an appointment." My heart raced. 4 months had passed since I left Nexus. Occasionally, Amanda would still send me updates about the increasingly worrying situation there. But I didn't expect Scott to come look for me in person. "Tell him I'll be there in 5 minutes. I took a deep breath, fixed my blazer, and slowly walked to the reception, using that time to compose myself. Scott was unrecognizable. His immaculate suit looked slightly wrinkled, his hair wasn't cut as perfectly as always, and I noticed deep dark circles. When he saw me, he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Jessica, thanks for seeing me." "Sure. We can talk in the meeting room. I pointed him to an empty room, deliberately avoiding taking him to my office, my territory, my safe space. We sat across from each other at the glass table. Scott looked uncomfortable, his fingers drumming nervously. You look great, he started. Your new job seems to be doing you well. I'm happy here, I replied simply. How can I help, Scott? He sighed, dropping the niceties. I need you to come back to Nexus. Even though I had already imagined this scenario, his direct statement took me by surprise. Pardon? After Emily left, we tried 3 different managers for your old position. No one can keep the processes running like you did. We lost 9 major clients last quarter. I'm sorry to hear that. No, you're not sorry, he said, a flash of frustration in his eyes. And I don't blame you. I made a terrible mistake by not recognizing your value. I stayed silent, watching him. It was surreal to see Scott, always so confident, so relentlessly self-assured, in that state. The board is pressuring us for results. We are facing significant cuts if we don't turn it around next quarter. He paused, running his hand through his hair. I'm offering you the Chief Operating Officer position. Double your current salary, profit sharing, and total autonomy over your area. It was exactly what I had dreamed about for years at Nexus. Everything I had wanted when I sat at that party, anxiously waiting for an announcement that never came. I'm flattered, Scott, but I have a similar position here. A position where I am respected from day one. I can beat any offer Michael is making, he insisted, desperation becoming evident. Name your price. I looked out the meeting room window, watching the movement of the team outside, people who trusted my leadership, projects I had built from scratch, an environment where my ideas flourished. It's not about the money, I finally replied. It never was. Then what? Revenge. Are you happy watching Nexus sink? I don't take any pleasure in Nexus's problems. I worked there for 5 years, built relationships, I care about many people there. Scott leaned forward, his eyes pleading. Then come back. Help save the company. Help save my job. There it was, the real reason for his visit. It wasn't about recognizing my value or righting an injustice. It was about saving his own skin. Scott, do you remember what you told me at that party? That I should take some notes from Emily? That new blood was exactly what you needed. He looked down, clearly ashamed. That was an unfortunate comment. I was trying to please some investors who wanted to see new faces in leadership roles. And now that those investors are seeing the consequences of that decision, you want me to come back and fix everything. Jessica, we all make mistakes. I'm asking for a second chance. I slowly stood up. Maybe you should be taking some notes, Scott. Sometimes, you have to lose something to understand its real value. Scott paled at hearing his own words return to him. For a moment I thought he would react with anger, the old Scott would have exploded. Instead, he seemed to shrink in his chair, as if finally facing the consequences of years of arrogance. Well deserved, he murmured after a long silence. Completely deserved. A soft knock on the door interrupted our moment. Michael appeared with a curious yet professional expression. Sorry to interrupt. Jessica, when you're done, we need to finalize the proposal for Meridian Corporation. They have moved their meeting up to tomorrow. Sure, I'll be in your office in 15 minutes, I replied. Michael nodded, giving Scott a sympathetic look before closing the door. Then that's it, said Scott, getting up. I'm not even going to consider your offer. Scott, I'm not refusing to punish you. I simply found a place where I have been valued from day one, not just when a crisis hits. He walked over to the window, watching the activity in the office. It's impressive what you have built here in such a short time. You are already bigger than Nexus was when I started as CEO. That comment surprised me. It was the first time Scott showed genuine admiration for someone else's work. I should have listened when you suggested restructuring the IT department last year, he continued, still looking out the window. And about expanding into the Asian market. And especially about talent management. Why didn't you listen? Because of ego? Fear? Maybe a little of both. When someone young starts to shine in the company, there are 2 options: promote them or hold them back. And you chose the latter. Not always consciously. Scott adjusted his tie, trying to regain some of his old composure. You know what is ironic? I saw myself as a mentor to you. I thought I was shaping you to eventually take on an important role. In your timeline, not mine. Exactly. He grabbed his coat hanging on a chair. The board is meeting next week to discuss Nexus's leadership future. This will probably be my last meeting as CEO. I did not feel the satisfaction I thought I would at that moment. Instead, a strange melancholy settled in. The end of an era, the closing of a chapter. I'm sorry, Scott. Don't be. It's the market doing what it does. He extended his hand. I have always admired your competence, Jessica. I just never knew how to show it properly. I shook his hand, feeling the strange weight of the moment. Good luck with Meridian Corporation. They were tough clients for us. I know. That's why I put my best talent on the project. I paused. One piece of advice. When you leave Nexus, recognize the value of the people around you from the start, not just when you're about to lose them. Scott nodded, a flash of understanding in his eyes. Lesson learned the hard way. We walked together to the reception. Several former Nexus employees watched us discreetly, surprised by Scott's presence. He greeted them with a polite nod before heading for the elevator. One last thing, he said, holding the elevator door. The proposal for Meridian. They value a detailed risk analysis. It was always a weak point in our presentations to them. I smiled at the irony of that final gesture, Scott finally sharing a valuable insight, only when he had nothing left to lose. Thanks for the tip. The elevator doors closed, and Scott Bennett, the man who for so long had defined my professional life, disappeared. I stood there for a moment, processing the encounter. Amanda had sent me a message that morning. Rumor has it Scott is desperate, personally visiting clients and trying to recover business. The board is losing patience. Now I understood the true extent of the crisis. It wasn't just about lost clients or disorganized processes. It was about leadership, trust, and recognition, the elements Scott had systematically neglected over the years. As I walked to Michael's office to discuss the proposal for Meridian, I felt a strange sense of closure. I hadn't sought revenge, but it came anyway, not by my hand, but as a natural consequence of Scott's choices. On my way, I stopped briefly to help a new team member with a question. While explaining the process, I noticed several faces around, people I had brought over from Nexus, talents that Scott had never fully recognized. All now flourishing under leadership that truly valued their contributions. That, I realized, was the true victory. 3 weeks later, the headline in the Wall Street Journal read, Nexus Technologies announces leadership change, CEO Scott Bennett steps down after 7 years. The article detailed the sharp fall in the company's shares, the loss of major clients, and the strategic restructuring the board decided to implement. Scott was described as having decided to pursue new challenges, the classic corporate euphemism for being fired. Amanda sent me a photo of Scott's last day in the office, boxes stacked up, his drained expression as he emptied the drawers in his office. The end of an era, she wrote. The board has appointed Patricia Chen as interim CEO. First order of business, re-evaluate all the processes implemented in the past 6 months. I quietly shared the news with Michael during our weekly lunch. It was inevitable, he commented, without malice. The market does not forgive management based on ego. You build for years, but you can destroy in months. Do you think they will recover? I asked. It depends on who takes over permanently. Patricia is smart, but she inherited a mess. Michael sipped some water. Ironically, you would be the perfect person for the job. I laughed at the suggestion. No way. I'm exactly where I should be. And it was true. Carter Consulting had become more than just a refuge from Nexus's toxicity. It was a project I was passionately dedicated to. We had just opened a second office in Chicago and were considering international expansion for next year. My team had tripled in size. We implemented a collaborative management model that became a case study at a major business school. And, more importantly, we created a culture where recognition and respect were core values, not just empty words in corporate presentations. 2 weeks after the news of Scott's departure, I received an unexpected invitation. The Business Leaders Association wanted me to give a talk on organizational transformation and a culture of recognition at their annual conference. They usually only invite CEOs and board chairs, Michael commented when I shared the news. It's a significant recognition. The conference took place at the Grand Hotel and brought together hundreds of executives from the country's largest companies. While waiting backstage, I peered through a small gap in the curtain, attentive faces, open notebooks, anticipation in the air. The host finished my introduction, an executive whose vision transformed not one, but 2 companies in the industry. Please welcome Jessica Martins, Chief Operating Officer of Carter Consulting. Applause filled the auditorium as I walked onto the stage. In the 3rd row, I noticed Patricia Chen, the new CEO of Nexus, nodding respectfully. Next to her was Amanda, whom I had recommended for the senior manager position after the restructuring. My presentation did not directly mention Nexus or Scott, but the principles I defended were clearly the opposite of everything he represented: transparency, recognition based on merit, active listening, talent development. I spoke about how companies often lose their best professionals not because of salary issues, but because they fail to recognize their contributions. The greatest asset of any organization is not found in the financial statements. It is in the people who choose to dedicate their time, creativity, and energy to build something meaningful. I concluded. When that asset is systematically devalued, no marketing strategy or capital injection can make up for the loss. The applause that followed was overwhelming. After the Q&A session, I was surrounded by executives eager to exchange business cards, set up meetings, and discuss possible partnerships. Patricia approached me after the crowd finally dispersed. "Inspiring presentation," she said. "We are implementing many of these principles at Nexus now. I'm glad to hear that. You do have talented people there." "We used to," she smiled sadly. "Many followed you. People follow environments where they can thrive." Patricia nodded. A hard lesson for Nexus, but necessary. She hesitated before continuing. "I heard Scott is trying to start his own consultancy. Not very successfully so far." The news did not surprise me, but it didn't bring satisfaction either. Scott's downfall was never my goal, it never was. "I hope he learns from the experience," I replied sincerely. That night, I returned home with the feeling of a fully closed cycle. I stood on the balcony of my apartment, watching the city lights. I thought of the Jessica from 5 years ago, eager to prove her worth, constantly seeking validation from a boss who never really saw her. My phone buzzed with a message from Michael. "The Wall Street Journal wants to do a profile on you for the Transformative Leaders series. Interested?" I smiled at the screen. I realized that the true revenge was not in Scott's fall or Nexus problems. It was in my own growth, in creating an environment where other talents could flourish, in showing that effective leadership comes from genuine recognition, not from fear or insecurity. I replied, "Absolutely. But let's focus on the future, not the past." I put down the phone and breathed in the night air. Sometimes the best response to being devalued is not to seek revenge but to create value elsewhere. Sometimes, simply moving on